Right there. Hi, everyone. Okay, we shall start our presentation for today. Now, if this is the first time I've spoken to you, I'm Wai-Yee Chen. I'm an investment advisor based in Sydney, Australia. Since the last 20 years, I've been based off Sydney and basically dealing in equities and derivatives, and I don't trade in Forex. So in today's forum, what we will be doing is to share with you, let me just clear this, okay. Basically today is to share with you my experiences as well as that of my clients and my research into the area of neuroscience and psychology in trading, which is pretty much agnostic to what you trade in, be it CFD, Forex, or options, or whatever the underlying is, the psychology of how one thinks, how your mental strength is and how the brain works is exactly the same. So it's agnostic to what the underlying instruments is. But the difference is, though, the more we trade in instruments that move dynamically and fast, then all the more we need these skills where psychology and neuroscience can push us towards peak point or giving us the edge that we need in trading. So today, what we'll be talking about is what is the role of emotions in trading, or is there a role for emotions in trading? Should we be avoiding it? Should we cut it out? Should we box it out? Or should we embrace? Or if so, how much and how? So that's what we will be exploring today. Disclaimer as usual, no investment, seek your own advice, and there's no Forex trading advice as well in this forum. Okay, so let's begin. Emotions. Now, the topic for today, emotions, is also the topic, one of the topics in my book, Neuroinvesting, in chapter 8. And when I was writing the book, this chapter was the hardest I found to write down my thoughts. Basically, I can't use any of the strategies that I've been using, things that I know, techniques, skill sets, or knowledge that I know. I can't back any of the things that I'm saying in this chapter with facts or figures or diagrams. I just have to not have any of those as clutches, but to focus on how I feel as a trader, and when I'm faced with decisions that affect profits and losses and or that of myself or my clients. So it's at the cold face, it's real. It's right in front of you, and there's nowhere to hide. So it's difficult, this topic, to really deal with it. So what I wanted to talk about, first of all, is to help us to come to a place, firstly, in being able to picture emotions. Because a lot of times we think emotions are fluffy, it's subjective, and we can't quite point to it or put our finger on it. So this is what I want to do today, to help you to be able to picture it and then name it. And then once we're able to do that, we can move forward. If we know what to do with this something that we can picture and name, then we know we can have the strategies to know how to deal with it. So this is the first objective that we want to come to. Where does it come from? How does it work? How do I even make sense of it? Can I actually manage it? Can I not be controlled by it? Or am I able to? And once we're able to come to that clear thinking about what emotions is, then that will help us to think better, and as a result of it, make better decisions. Now, what I'm saying today is not about analyzing, not about paying attention to every emotion that happens all the time, because there will be automatic emotions that we should let them be automatic, because we can't analyze and focus on each and every one of them. But what we are saying is, at the key moments, the key emotions that will affect key decisions in lives or trading, that's what we want to focus on and pay attention to. So the point is this: let those that can go on automatic where possible, let them be automatic, but choose to pay attention and focus on those emotions that will matter. Now, take a look at these 6 phases. Can you identify these 6 emotions? What does this phase tells you? Happiness? Joy? What about this lady here? What do you think? Is that a fear look or shock? Shock, thank you. Yeah, look at her eyes. That's definitely a shock. What about this guy? What does his face say to you? Is that a fear look? Oh yes, absolutely. Yes, that's fearful look. Thank you. What about this lady here? How do you think she's feeling? Confusion? Maybe. Maybe. Anything else? With her pursed lips. Yeah, she's angry. That's right. Thank you. She is angry with her pursed lips. How about this lady here? What do you think? Her eye says it all, I think. Anyone? Worried? Yeah, I think so. Tired? Yeah, I think she's tired from worrying. But there is one more emotion that you can tell from her eyes that perhaps we don't feel as much while trading, but in everyday life, yes, sadness. Exactly right. Thank you. You can see the sadness in her eyes. What about this guy? What do you think? What is that emotion all about? Skeptical? Yeah. Anything else? Anything else comes to mind? Contempt. Well, thoughtful? Possible? Well, this guy, the face that you're seeing here, his name is actually Dr. Paul Ekman, and he is the pioneer or the first scientist who has actually studied these facial expressions in people. And he says this one here himself, he's taken a picture of himself. He says that's the picture of contemptness. And he says that these 6 phases that we've gone through to identify the emotions of are the 6 universal facial expressions. It does not matter where you come from, who you are, your education, background, income level, country that you come from. He's saying this is how we've learned, either that or culturally inherited from, or we just know how to express these 6 emotions when it arises in us. So according to what Dr. Paul Ekman is saying here is that these 6 emotions, again, happiness, shock, surprised, fear, being afraid, angry, dissatisfied, sad, or contempt. These are the 6 key universal emotions that we all feel. Now, let's have a think about trading. Okay, now we know in life at some stage, perhaps in the same day, we may be feeling all these 6 emotions. But what about trading? Can you think of any occasions where you feel happy? I can think of several. The first one that came to mind when I was thinking about this was I feel I'm right. A position that I had been wrong for a long time. Finally, it becomes profitable. I feel happy. You have that sense that, yeah, I'm right. Finally, that sense of happiness that comes, even disregarding the dollar amount or percentage that you've made, but just being right about your own conviction and backing yourself and actually taking up the position or getting into the position gives you that level of joy. What about feeling vindicated? Market, or perhaps we think, is irrational and we are rational and we're making the right call, but it hasn't turned out right, and finally it did, and we feel vindicated. Again, is a kind of happiness, kind of joy. I don't know whether I'm alone out here or you guys feeling the same thing as well when you're trading. Do let me know if you are, and if you do feel such emotion as well when you're trading. And the third one that comes to mind is when I realize a profit. I mean, that's just, pure joy. It's not just a sense of achievement in calling something right and then making money out of it, but it's more than money. It's a sense of achievement and confidence in your own ability and knowing that you can do it. It's that kind of joy. What about you finally pulling the trigger, going into the trade, this time in realizing a loss? This paper loss, which been sitting there for a while, been bothering you, been nagging at you to take the loss, and you haven't quite decided what to do. Do I lock it in? Do I let it come back into profitability? What do I do? But sometimes pulling the trigger in actually realizing a loss actually gives you a sense of relief, and you can get a sense of happiness out of it, that you finally out of that worrisome position that has been dragging you down, and now you can rest, you can sigh, and you can move on to the next position. And the fifth one that came to mind was finally jumping into a trade. And I think for a lot of traders, we analyze a lot of trades, we think about this, that, pros and cons, and finally, sometimes we don't pull the trigger. And for those who have this problem, not being able to pull the trigger or jumping into trades, being able to do it, finally doing it, and seeing your position actually come to fruition, gives you a sense of joy and satisfaction beyond dollars and cents. So to me, happiness, this emotion, comes from more than the money, more than the profits. It gives you a sense of confidence, trust in your own ability, your own knowledge, or perhaps just being decisive. So that's what investing can deliver to us as traders, the happiness and the joy, which can be beyond numbers and dollars. Now, what about in the second emotion, surprised and shocked? Have you been surprised or shocked in your trading? I can think of one big event. Yeah, I can think of one big event in your Forex space. Remember Swiss franc? Yeah. So in equities, it would be like when prices gap. The worst thing is, you wake up in the morning. Well, for us in Australia, we used to be, be affected by what happens on the Dow, and there's not much you can do because it's bedtime, and you react to it in the morning when the Aussie market opens and prices get down, and that's like shock and horror. It's like it's too late to react. You can't do anything. Positions which have been profitable before could now be dragged down to losses just within minutes. For example, due to profit warnings by a company or something that's happened overnight in the economy, or some announcement that's out of the left field by the government, treasury, or the company itself. So shock and surprised is one emotion that is common to us as traders as well. But the fact is, how will we react to this emotion of shock and surprise? I can think of one of three ways. One is react first, do the first thing that comes to mind, and think later. So this may be just get out of the position and ask questions later for some. Second is do nothing, sink in, sit down, analyze, find out the source of it, the cause of, and then decide on the course of action. Yeah, hold back, sit back, let it sink in, and then use your cognitive skills to help you to decide how to get out of the jam. And the third one is do nothing, let fate decide. So emotions come at us, not just in life, but very much in trading as well. But it's how we react to the emotion. Is how we react to the emotion of shock. And yes, are we still alive post shock? And how do we deal with the shock? Now, I'll tell you this: if we are prepared and we have predetermined the action that we may take when we are in a shocked trading position, or what we call black swan, then we are in a better space to deal with that emotion. So it's all about being aware of it, being knowing that it will happen at some stage, and having the strategy in place to deal with it when it actually happens. So that's shock and being surprised. Now, fear and afraid, being afraid is very common. As we've known, fear and greed is one big emotion or two big emotions that we constantly deal with. And notice that greed is not part of the 6 universal emotions. Okay, think about that. It's not an emotion. It's a trait. It's a personality trait, something that you can control, tweak, and manage. But it's not an emotion. But fear is. So with fear and being afraid, we've talked about it quite at length in the last webinar, so you can go back and have a look at that. But yes, that's another key emotions that come at us quite often as trader. Now, these 3 at the bottom, being angry, being sad, being contemptuous. Now, these 3 are it does happen in trading, as I was thinking about it as well, perhaps not as direct as we would consider. For example, think about this situation and tell me which one of the 3 emotions that will invoke in you. You did not get into a position, even though you knew, or which you had a high conviction of. What sort of emotion will invoke in you in that situation? You wanted to get in, you didn't, and then the market moved. Anger. Yeah, I got that down as well. Anger with self. Yeah, I agree with that. Anger. And perhaps a bit of sadness. I mean, frustration. Yeah, I feel that too. And a bit of sadness because, it's like, why did I do it? It was an opportunity to make money, and I just couldn't, pull the trigger, and whatever reason it was, I didn't do it. Yes, I think I would be angry at myself. Now, what about this? An IPO collapsed shortly post-listing due to non-disclosure of or earnings forecast inaccuracy or a loss of key contract. This is very, very shortly post-IPO. We've got this as well recently in our Aussie market. I mean, it does happen. What kind of emotions will invoke in you if you had been one of the investors who had just invested money in an IPO which collapsed shortly? How will you feel? I would say anger and contempt for the management of the company, for not disclosing everything, or disclosing inaccurate earnings, or just not being transparent with the market. I think contempt would come in this scenario. And the last one, how about this? You lost money in a bear market. How would you feel? Are you sad that you invested the way you did, or actually are you angry with those who caused the GFC to happen? Could be both, angry or sad that you lost money, and angry with those who caused the whole financial crisis to evolve. So as you can see, all these 6 emotions are real. They don't just happen in everyday life, but very much so in trading as well. And now that it has given you a picture, it's no longer subjective. Okay, we can picture them, we understand them, we know how they feel like because we have felt them all before. Now, the next question then becomes, where do emotions come from? Any suggestions? Where do emotions come from? Yeah, learned, habit. Where does it come from? Do you think it's from within yourself, internal, external? Is it caused by inner self? Neurology? Yeah. Very, very good answers. Thank you for participating. You guys are really good. Now, I'm going to bring up research by a very famous scientist called Antonio Damasio. So some of you might have heard of him before. He's done a particular research that really interested me in. And he says that, firstly, he says we are more than our thoughts, okay? And he proposes that there are two loops to our emotions, which means it's not just from inner self, okay, which inner self was one of the answer there, and not just neurologically, but there are two loops of it. The combination, but he explains it quite well in saying that there is a loop called the body loop, and there is another loop called the as-if body loop. Now, what do I mean by that, or what does he mean by that? Now, this is the body loop that you're seeing here on screen. As you can see here, these are the bodily parts that we're familiar with: abdomen, liver, and stomach, and all that. Now, the theory goes that, or the research goes that there are nerves that are far-reaching and long, which goes all the way into different parts of our body and connects back to our brain. And what it says is that emotions that are first felt in the body, for example, churning in your stomach, when you anxious, or sweaty palms, or breathing stronger when you're nervous, heart pumping faster when you're anxious, shaking, hands sensation. And what else can you think of? I don't know, churning in your stomach. And these are all the sensations that, or sweaty palm and stuff like that, that you can actually feel in your body. And these sensations, the messages of them, are sent through these vagus nerves to your brain and tells you that you are feeling anxious, fearful, or whatever that emotion it may be. So this is the body loop, as in it actually arises from how we're feeling in the body. And then he says that there is yet another loop, which is called the as-if body loop. Now, this is quite different. These emotions do not arise from the body. Instead, they are emotions that are felt by the brain. And the particular part that has been localized or discovered by science that sort of stimulate or feels emotions is this yellow part here called the ventral medial prefrontal cortex. So this is part of the cognitive brain. It's not the emotional brain. This part here is the emotional brain, and that's the hindbrain, which we've gone through before. So it's part of the cognitive brain and the prefrontal cortex, and it's a very particular area of the prefrontal cortex called the ventral medial prefrontal cortex, and that's where the cognitive brain actually regulates emotions. It recalls memories of emotions. It associates things that you see, that you feel, that you are stimulated with past emotions that are saved in your memory bank. It sees patterns. For example, if I can use this example, say Chinese people are smart. Okay, so if you see a Chinese person, you might think, oh, that person might be smart because they're Chinese. So it's just a shortcut, the heuristics that your brain has trained itself to pick things up quickly, and you have a certain emotion that arises in you that reminds you of certain events or experiences in the past that has happened before, but you may not have felt it, but the brain is telling you that you're feeling this emotion. This is very, very interesting part of the emotion that we need to be aware of, because if we think that emotions is just the body loop, is what we are sensing, then we're missing a big part of emotions, because this part of the brain is actually the emotional regulator, is the emotional reader that can help us to navigate emotions better. Now, there is a very famous case study that has been brought up before. I'm not sure whether you've heard of Phineas Gage. It's a very famous case. Has anyone heard of this case study before? What happened to him? No? Okay. Phineas Gage, basically, he has become a very famous patient in the neuroscience area. Now, what happened was Phineas Gage was a track worker. So his job was basically with his other colleagues to basically break up rocks that are near to the rail tracks so that they can clear them and build more tracks around them. So what they typically do is basically using an iron rod, as we can see the iron rod here, to create a hole in the rock, and then he will fill it with gunpowder. And what he'll do after is lit it, and then with cover it and lit it, and with the gunpowder and the explosion will actually break up the rock, and then that will clear the way for them to build the rail tracks. But on this particular day, Phineas Gage was said to be a very jovial guy before the accident. Handsome, good looking, and full of jokes, and he's just one who is quite popular amongst his colleagues and friends. So on that particular day, he did the normal thing, which is using the iron rod to break a hole in the rock, filled it with gunpowder, but he had forgotten to cover it. And as he was still pounding it with the gunpowder, he went on to lit the gunpowder, and as we can imagine, explosion actually happened. The rock actually blasted, exploded based on the gunpowder, and the rod that he was holding in his hands went through his skull, and that's actually what happened. So it actually pierced through his frontal lobe. That's the front bit of his brain. So his colleagues were panicky, and it was a major accident and everything else that happened. But Phineas Gage actually survived the accident. He could speak, he could reason, he could talk like normal. But his friends actually discovered one big difference about him, and that is that he's no longer jovial, he's brash. He used to be the star worker in his company. He no longer is. He can't hold on to a job, and he's just unpleasant to be around with. His whole behavior, his whole social demeanor changed, and hence, because of what happened to Gage, he became a very famous a case study or a patient of neuroscientists, several neuroscientists that studied his brain, some before and some after he passed. And what they managed to do based on this case study or the brain of Gage is that they were able to localize the part of our brain that affects our behavior, that regulates emotions, how we think, not just cognitively, but for long term, for peace of mind, for things that are beyond just monetary or short term or just what we want for ourselves, for others, for long term, for the good of society. And that's what they found missing in Gage after his frontal lobe was impaired. And that particular part of the brain that was impaired was exactly that VMPFC that we talked about earlier. So what scientists are saying to us is that that is a very part of our brain, the VM prefrontal cortex, that actually regulates emotions and help us to navigate emotions better. So is coming back to the question that we started at the beginning of this webinar, is there a role for emotions in decision making? If we were to really divide up the traders out there, agnostic of whatever investment tools or vehicle that we use or instruments that we use, there are basically two major camps out there. One is no, I will avoid emotions altogether. Cut it out because it's we are basically biased as humans. We're imperfect, and if we invite emotions into the arena of investing, then we're inviting our flaws as humans into the space of investing, and that will not be good. So in order not to be biased by it, not to be tripped by it, not to be pulled by it, why don't we just avoid it altogether, just leave it out? So we do know that there are positives for that way of thinking, or that school of thought, as well as we know that impulsiveness has come, and fear has caused, or anxiety has caused traders to react to situations or trade the way that they shouldn't have. But what about school number 2, where we say, yes, we embrace emotions, we totally let emotions guide and inform our decisions. And this is where those who trade more instinctually, they allow emotions to guide their decisions. They trade on momentum, or they look at patterns and charts and stuff like that, and going with the flow, going with what emotions are telling them, and it has worked for them in the way they trade, and cognitive and just make the whole decision process more complex. Now, I'll just stop there and ask, is anyone in either of those camps out there? Can you say that you're camp 1 categorically, or camp 2? Anyone out there? That you go by rules, go by systems completely, and you try to avoid emotions as much as you can? The 3? Yeah, okay. Anyone? Camp 1, camp 2? Or perhaps camp 3? More in the camp 3? Where more in the camp 3. So that's where that's what I'm getting. More about including emotions, stay in the middle ground where you let emotions guide you, where it justifies to do so, and yet we do not let emotions pull us unaware, or to be affected by biases that we know are in existence in how we think and how we feel. So if camp 3 is where we are most of the time, so that's good. So let's look at how emotions can add value to the whole decision process. Now, emotions, number 1, make us human, is adaptive. We are humans, and we have emotions, and we realize that there are flaws to emotions, and there are biases that can come with emotions. But emotions can also be learned and unlearned. New ones can be learned, and old ones that we want to discard with can be unlearned. For example, fear conditioning. And if we know that we have a tendency to be triggered by fear, even from neutral piece of news, then we should work on the fear emotion, so that we are able to be more prepared when fear stimuli happens to us. But emotions do come because we're humans, and it's part of being human. But paying attention, again, not to each and every emotion and each and every day and all the time, but to the key emotions, and during times that matter, will only sharpen our thinking and give us better clarity of thought, and achieve better decisions. And what about the second one? Emotions add value or information to our decisions. Have you? Now, this happened to me many times before, reading like IPOs, for example, trying to analyze whether to invest in a float or not, reading the prospectus versus meeting the management of the company which is floating face to face. Has anyone done that? Attending a pre-float presentation, meeting management, seeing how they talk, their facial expressions, their bodily language. It's really valuable. if you're thinking of investing in a float, as in a new company to be listed, when one attends a presentation, it completely changes the whole perception that you have of the company that you're about to invest in. There are many times that I've attended a presentation and I decided for or against investing in it, having read the prospectus, having understood what it does. But when I encounter the management of the company face to face, they've made the forecast that they've done in the prospectus, and just seeing them talk about those forecasts, what their plans are, what their philosophy is behind how they're managing the company, just either give me the conviction that they can do it or not. And many times, just being able to have that extra level of information that is not from numbers, not from the words of the prospectus, helps me or just push me to either one of the direction. And even today, as is an experience that I had with a fund that I have had an experience with, and again, it was an IPO of a fund that I've not invested in because I had a certain mindset or a bias towards the founder of the fund, because I think that someone of his background who is a famous personality, and which I actually think that he wouldn't have the capability to turn that public profile into running a public fund successfully. So I had that negative bias towards him, and hence I did not invest. But he has proven me wrong subsequently as I spend time with him, I talk to him, I understand his philosophy. So there added value and information to emotions, and being being able to pick up those emotions of others add value to how we decide. And the third one is emotions help where uncertainty increases. This is where emotional markers, meaning emotional, coming back to Damasio again, is the emotions that has left a mark in our memory and our brain that will be relieved and recalled when certain events or experiences that seem similar, that our brain picks up and associate with past experiences. The emotions of those past experiences actually inform how we would decide in the present decision that we're considering. Now, if we're not aware of those past decisions, it can trip us or move us to the negative decision. But if we're aware of the past emotions, what the emotion that has left behind, most of the time is about losses, is about fear, is about remembering how embarrassed we were or how angry or sad we were based on those losses, be it big or small, but it's the emotional impact that we felt based on that experience. And when uncertainty increases again, those emotions will remind us, will inform us to the present decision. And the fourth is impulsiveness causes decision errors. And this is one big area where, remember I was telling you about the VM prefrontal cortex, we really need to work with our cognitive brain in order to regulate the emotions that we're feeling. It's not either or, it's not every emotion, but there's certain emotions and certain times that really we need to work at it more and use the cognitive part of our emotional reader to help us. Now, there is a very famous and interesting gambling task that I want to show you that has basically helped us understand more the part of our brain, which is the ventral media prefrontal cortex of our brain. Now, this gambling test, I'll be quick. We're finishing quite soon. Basically, there are 4 decks of cards here, A, B, and C, and D. Now, the test is set up in a way that testees are allowed to draw from any of these decks at any time, 1 card at a time, and they're allowed to switch decks anytime they want. And they're asked to draw a total of 10 cards to begin with and continue the game after that. So 10 each time. Now, from deck A and deck B, those who will draw from these two decks will find that each time they draw a winning card, they will win $100. But the stakes of A and B are much higher, because after 10 cards, they will find that they would have lost 1,250 from drawing cards from these two decks. So basically, we're saying, if you were to win all 10 cards, you will win $1,000. If you were to lose from all these 10 cards, you will lose 1,250, which means you're a net loss of 250. So short-term gain, really good, but long-term, really, you're giving yourself a net loss position. Now, on the other hand, those who will be drawing from C and D will be subjected to a smaller upfront gain. Each winning card that they draw is only $50. So after 10 cards, the most they can win is $500. But they will find that the losses from these two decks are smaller as well. The maximum that they'll lose from this is just minus 250. And hence, over the long term, if they keep drawing from deck C and deck D, they will be better off over the long term. So what this test is telling us is that they found that the testees, the group of from their sample size, who kept drawing from the deck A and B, even though they realized that they will end up with a loss after 10 cards, but they kept going for the initial gain of $100, versus those who tolerated the small gain, because they knew that at the end of the 10 cards, over the long term, they will win. And they said that they found those who chose to go with the C and D were the more normal testees, people who know how to regulate their emotions, or more mature and have learned to train their emotions. This is my interpretation. But the A that they said who have impairment in their VM prefrontal cortex, which means those who either had a lesion there or removed or something, they do not know how to regulate their emotions, or we will interpret as to help them to make a long-term bet. They're going for short-term gains. So what science is telling us, and what we've learned today, basically is this: if we are driven by emotions, if we are run by unexamined emotions, and yet not being aware of these emotions that arise, where they come from, how they affect us, how they drive us, particularly when it comes to important decisions, then we're ruled by them, and yet not know that. And that will cause lots of frustrations, disappointment in self, and perhaps even giving up. And that's not what we want. We say stay away from the break point. What we want to do is to help you shift the curve to the peak point, where you are aware of your emotions. You pay attention to those key ones at the key moments where you need to make important decisions. You take the information content, the value that emotions will give you, and discard those that are unproductive, those that are negative, but to help you to work towards a fuller decision and towards peak point. So I'm going to leave it there, folks. And if you want to add anything, any experiences that you have in dealing with emotions or questions, then feel free to do that. Can you bring that question up again? Thank you. There was a question that came up earlier. Can you bring that again? I didn't see that. Any questions? Anything? What is the best way to silence the mind? Yeah, I've mentioned this before in my previous webinar. Meditation is, meditation, a word is very, very well used, I think, in our present world, busy world. And meditation, what it does, whatever form that you embark on, or whatever way that you do it in, I guess what we're trying to get to is, yes, to be able to still our mind. See, if we're not able to to still our mind and stop and feel it. We're talking about emotions here. We really need to stop and let the emotion arise in us and then analyze it. That's where we learn. That's where we are able to decipher what the information that emotions are trying to tell us. And then we can use our cognitive skill, which is the prefrontal cortex, the specific part of prefrontal cortex, to regulate, to decide, to read into that emotions. What do we take from it? How do we react? And how do we decide? So to be able to stop and focus and meditate, and however you do it, it could be a regular meditation period where you learn how to still your mind, and hence when the times that you really need to focus on that emotion, you're there because you're used to that emotion. Or just pretty much stop and pause at that particular moment when that emotion arises in you, and just read into it. Just read, stop, analyze, feel it, and read into it, and allow your cognitive brain to help you regulate and help you clear up that situation, and come to a better overall solution. Thank you. Thanks for attending. We have 3 more minutes to go before we finish. So if you have any last point to make, or if you have a topic that you want me to cover in future webinars, you can drop me an email, or you can bring it up now, or you have questions in the next couple of minutes, feel free to do so. If not, I'll see you next time, everyone. Okay, thanks for coming. Thanks for attending. I'll see you all next time.